Okay.
Okay.
All right. So a very good morning. From far away from Malaysia. Also morning from the UK side, right? Okay. So a very good morning and salam sejahtera to our panelists today. DS Dr. Anas is far away from the UK. So also the students, especially the final year project 2 students. All right. So today we have our sections together with our speaker or panelists. So TS Dr. Anas. So today Dr. Anas will be shared with us the some of the tips, right, for preparing your chapter 4 and chapter 5 in your FYP tool later on the report, especially because this is your second part for your final year project report on thesis. All right. So I think without delay of the time, so I would like to pass the session to our panelists. TS Dr. Anas. So Dr. Anas, are you ready for that?
Okay. All right.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. So this is your time.
All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. Salam sejahtera, selamat pagi to all students. First of all, thank you, Dr. Tan, and also for the basically the dissemination from the FYP coordinator for giving me the chance to share a bit from my experience of supervising students. So without further ado, I think I'll start my session. Okay, so please treat these sessions very casual. I understand it's quite early right now in Malaysia. So grab a coffee, grab a tea, and then hopefully you can get something from this sharing session. Okay, all right. So who am I? I think Dr. Tan already explained. My name is Anas. I am a senior lecturer from Mechanical Engineering program. Currently, I am in the UK for my postdoctoral attachment or visiting academic researcher. So right now in the UK, it's 2:35 in the morning. So there is a 7-hour difference between Malaysia and UK. So hopefully you understand that if you think this session is a bit early in Malaysia, it's much earlier for me as well. So hopefully you can understand the perspective and some context on that. Okay, as explained by Dr. Tan, I've been given this task to share some tips, do's and don'ts, a bit on chapter 4 and 5 on how you can basically prepare for your FYP final report. So hopefully from this session, you can get some idea on what is it that we are looking for from the perspective of the panels, and as well, of course, from the perspective of your supervisor and your coordinator. Okay, so, if you got any questions, please do. You can stop me. You can give me a shout, or because I think we're going to have a big, quite a large number of students, you can just drop message in the message center over there. Okay, so don't wait until the end of the session because you might have forgotten the questions. So please, if you got any questions, drop a message as we go on. All right. So for today's discussion, I'll try to cover 2 parts of it. The first part we'll discuss on chapter 4 and 5 and what is it that we're looking for, or what is it that should be in chapter 4 and 5. And for the second part, which is part B, we look at some samples from past students, so to give you some ideas on some do's and don'ts or some mistakes made by the previous students, okay? So that it gives some context when we look at part A, when we discuss, you understand, okay, this is what should be in. And when we look at part B, you will understand what is it that being made by students, basically, when we say, okay, do A, B, C, and D, but some or most of the time, students tend not to follow what is being asked or try to simplify too much and not giving what is being asked by the panels or supervisors. So we'll try to look at that in part B. Okay, so please make sure you stay on in this session. And again, if you got any questions, let me know. All right. So the first thing that I think that students usually have trouble is to look for or how to start. So I've been told by Dr. Tan that right now you guys are already in week 7. So you're already halfway there. But if you still have trouble writing or with your project and not sure where to start, okay, I hope I can give you some guidance from this session. Okay, all right. The first thing that I want to share is this framework. I'm not sure whether your panels, sorry, not your panels, your supervisor have heard about this or not, or maybe Dr. Tan, Dr. Sefungwa, Dr. Zamzuri have shared this with you or not. If not, hopefully after this session, I'll try to share this document with you guys, hoping that it could give some help or tips on preparing the final report for you guys. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna stop sharing just a bit, and I'm gonna share the document. Okay. Just 1 second. Okay. All right. I hope you guys can see the screen that I'm sharing right now. Okay. Okay. So this is the framework that I developed for FYP project based on my experience providing students over the years. Please note that this basically framework or guidelines might not be exhaustive. It's just basically what I've experienced over the years, what I think should be beneficial, or what I think that students should know is being compiled together in this document. Okay, so I'm going to share it not in detail, but I'm just going to basically go through this document. And if you have any questions or looking forward or wondering where you can get this, I'll share the information after this. Okay. All right. So this document basically consists of two parts. The first part is basically the summary of the essential tips that I share or I want to share with students. And I expect students basically to understand this before they proceed with FYP. So it's not just about chapter 4 and 5 right now. It's all about the whole experience of doing your FYP work. All right. So we'll start with the FYP goals, okay? And then I highlighted to students basically over the years, when you expect to do something, when you plan ahead, you might have to think about what is basically the challenges ahead of you. So basically, for the past 2 or 3 years, we had COVID, and then we have quite a few events that is unexpected. So, for example, some of students, I think it's quite normal over the semesters, we had reports where students got their files corrupted. So just imagine you did your work for about 6 months or 1 year, and then suddenly at the end of the year, when you try to write a thesis, the file corrupted, so you got no backup, for example. So I hope this document gives some context on how to prevent that. Okay, so all right, this is a fishbone diagram where I highlighted some of the reason why students did not do well in the FYP. So even though I say here over here poor FYP project, so that's basically the head of the diagram. Basically, it summarized some of the reason that I think came from my own experience, from as being a supervisor, from being a panel, as well as being a coordinator over the years. These are some of the important or essential reasons why students did not do well. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in a bit. So because if I want to cover each of these topics or details, it will be quite exhaustive. It's quite a lot. So I'm going to focus a bit, for example. Okay, so for example, why students' report are not good. Okay, so for example, if we go over here, you can see, I'm going to zoom in a bit again. Okay, for example, for report formatting, some of the issues, for example, for table of contents, page numbering is not updated, uneven spacing of list, and for example, over here, captions for figures and tables, not given proper citation, not understanding where to put the caption for the figures or for the tables, not using cross-referencing, for example, Mendeley. Okay, and then what else can I try to highlight here? Okay, so for example, if you're writing one paragraph that is too long. For example, one paragraph should only be about 4 or 5 lines or 5 sentences. It shouldn't be like one paragraph that covers the whole page. So I highlighted some of them over here. Okay, for example, over here, some students over the year reported that they submitted their report to the supervisors but did not get back or did not get any comments to improve from the supervisor. So what should you do in that situation? Okay, so I highlighted some of these over here in this fishbone diagram with the hope that students can get some understanding and prepare. Okay, this is things that contribute to poor FYP project. So avoid this. So that's my hope basically to the students. I'll give the details after we finish this document. Okay, so that's about the fishbone diagram. And then in this diagram also, I highlighted, for example, what should be in or what should be written for each chapters. So for example, if you go to chapter 1 over here, okay, what should be in there? Okay, I give you some hints over there. Problem statement, it should be what? General overview, objective must be smart. Okay, so in chapter 2, for example, what should be in the literature review? So this document is quite comprehensive if students dedicate their time, 1 hour, to go through this document and get something from it. Okay, so this document is useless if you know it exists but do not take any actions to try to find it or to try to study it. Okay, all right. So it covers up until references. So I would say if you pay attention to this document, you should be okay for your FYP project. Okay, all right. So we're going to proceed. Okay, so how to do well in FYP, some tips I've given here. Examples of poorly constructed flowcharts. You can see here, we see this every semester. A very, very simple flowchart, okay, which I'm not going to cover because this is part of chapter 3. But you can see here the issues, for example, decisions or improvement is too direct. Okay, there is no decision where you need to improve your results. Okay, and then about plagiarism, which is, I think, quite an important issue in academic writing. So all these are here is just a matter of you want to read it or not. Okay, how to avoid plagiarism, some tips on your presentation. So over the years, again, I keep on repeating myself, but over the years, being a panel, even though the lecturers, the supervisors, we try, okay, do this, don't do this. We try to give some guidance to you guys, but in the end, you as a student, you need to decide for yourself whether you want to take the information, to take the guidelines given or not. Okay, so as I said, this document, I would say, is quite comprehensive, but if you don't pay attention, if you don't read it, if you don't care about it, it will not help you. Okay, so I hope you understand that. Okay, so if you spend some time, you go through this document, it should be very helpful to you guys. Okay, so and this is again the thesis structure. What should be in from the start abstract until the end? So it's listed over here. Tenses is quite important as well, but don't be mistaken. We are not like we are not TESOL students or learning English. English is important, but it's not the most important part for your FYP writing. As long as it's readable, your thesis is readable, your report is readable, it should be okay. Okay, but try to spend some time to understand what are the tenses needed for each part. Say, okay, so for example, when to use past tense, when to use present tense, or when to use the present perfect. So I'll summarize everything in this table. Okay, and then most of the lecturers, they try to basically convert students' thesis into journal manuscript, and this basically summarize on what or how you can do that. Okay, I've got students, my own students, who basically publish their own work from FYP work into journal papers, and it has been accepted. So it helps them in terms of their CV publication, CV preparation, as well as during interview with the panels when you looking for work later on. Okay, so I've got some things over here. This is about the lecturer's scope. Okay, Okay, all right. Now, part B of this document covers the project flowchart. Let's look at how the flowchart created by my FYP students. So please note that the documents, that the flowcharts that I'm going to share over here, they all came from my FYP students. Okay, not from my master or PhD students, but from my FYP students. Okay, so the first one is from my students, Ramadan. His flowchart basically consists of 3 pages. Okay, so if you look over here, he constructed a 3 pages flowchart. Okay, page 1, page 2, and page 3. Okay, so my next student, so this is from Arif. He only has 1 page, but you can see the details layout of the flowchart. Okay, so this is from my other students. Again, he summarized everything in 1 page. Okay, in a landscape mode, which I'm going to cover in my presentation later. Okay, and my other students, Najwa, I think she did 2 pages of a flowchart. Let's see here, page 2. Okay, and last one is from my other students, Shafiq. I think he did 2 pages flowchart. Okay, so you might be wondering, okay, if you look at this flowchart, why would we need like a 2 pages flowchart, a 3 pages flowchart? So for example, if I go back over here, this is a 1 page flowchart. If you look at this flowchart, for example, it should give you the summary of the whole project, and that what a flowchart should looks like. If you do a simple flowchart that I showed just now, just a straight line where you have 4 or 5 bars from start to end, it doesn't give the information needed. Okay, and you have to admit, when you look at a flowchart like this, when a panel look an effort from students, they will be impressed, and that's a good thing. So what you are going to do basically for your presentation in Viva as well as your thesis report is you're trying to impress your panels, your readers. Okay, so this is one of the methods to impress them. Okay, so it's not about writing what you did for your project. Okay, if you did experimental work or simulation work, that's fine. That's the important part, yes. But how you translate the information into visual presentation, that's equally important as well. Okay, so if you do this, you present this in your report, believe me, panels would be impressed. Okay, all right. Okay, so that's about the flowchart. Okay, I'm going to continue with my presentation. Again, if you got any questions, let me know. All right. Okay, just 1 second. All right. So the question is, if you're wondering where you can find this document that I just shared, or many more actually, you can find them from my website, which I'm going to share in a bit. Okay, so just 1 second, guys. Just want to share you basically my website. So it's going to take a while. Okay, hopefully you can see my website right now. Okay, so this is my website. I'm going to share with you guys the QR code for the website, so you don't have to take the URL link or anything. I'll share with you guys at the end of the presentation. Okay, so in my website, basically, if you're interested to look at that document, I'm sharing it with all students. So don't worry. I'm not just sharing it with my students, but I make it public. So I share it with everyone. So hopefully it can be beneficial for you guys. So if you go to here, you go to teaching and students, you go to FYP 101, sample 1, you click that, you need to enter a password, which I'm going to share in a bit. Once you enter the password, a page like this should come up. Okay, so if you look at this, the icon over here where the headings are, you can see I've shared the essential tips, which the document that I shared just now. Okay, so you can have a look where I shared over here. Okay, and then the other FYP framework that I developed, especially for the students who are doing numerical modeling. Okay, so for example, you can see over here, just 1 second. Okay, I'm not going to basically make a full screen, share everything, just briefly go through so that you can look for yourself later. Okay, so basically I developed a flow chart, basically highlighting on how a numerical model should be developed, or what should be in simulation basically for FYP students. Okay, and of course I shared some samples about FYP proposals. These are all coming from my own students. Okay, samples of proposal defense, Viva, okay, and then how to write a logbook. Okay, you can use the document, that the template that your coordinator give you, but my students basically they need to do a weekly presentation, and instead of relying on that template, they did a PowerPoint compilation at the end of the semester. So you can see over here it's a bit different than yours, but it's just the same because the purpose is a logbook. So you can see here, these are their logbooks basically. So that's how my students basically present every week. So for 14 weeks for plus FYP1 and FYP2, so we have like 28 weeks worth of presentation. So they have to present in a PowerPoint. So these are their basically their logbooks. Okay, and then we have a sample of FYP1 as well as a sample of FYP2. So you can have a look, get some idea of what is to be expected from panels as well as your supervisor. And of course, some publications. As I said, my students, they managed to publish papers from their FYP work. So which I think you should aim, because it helps you a lot in terms of when you start interviewing for your work and so on. Okay, I've got one student who managed to get work at Intel, and he mentioned that the experience doing the papers, okay, as well as the FYP journey, helped him a lot during the interview. Okay, so just give it a thought. Just give it a thought on how you can improve your CV, basically. Okay, all right. So that's about the website. Okay, we'll go back to my presentation. Okay. All right. Okay, if you cannot see my screen, please let me know. Okay, you should see my PowerPoint screen right now. Okay, so I've shared the website basically. So I will share the QR code at the end of the session. But if for some reason you miss out the end of the session, you can go to the faculty's website, our faculty's website, FKTM, and look under staff, find my name. There is the link for my website located over there as well. Okay, so I'll share the QR code at the end of the session, so don't worry. All right. So in order for you to get access to the site where I shared all the documents, you need a password, and the password is very simple. It's just UniMAP. Okay, so just enter UniMAP, and you should be able to access all the documents there. Please note, I've disabled the download option, so you can only have basically look the documents from the website, okay, on the PDF. Okay, all right. Okay. Share this just 1 second. Point option. Okay. All right. So if as I highlighted just now, from the fishbone diagram in one of the documents that I've shared, you can see the details of some issues usually faced by students. And I think this is one of the most important for me. When you have a supervisor, okay, and at the end of the semester, usually 2 or 3 weeks before the final submission, you have done all the work. When you submitted your draft, okay, you need to submit a draft to your panels, to your supervisor, sorry. Your supervisor, by right, should give you some feedback on the writing of your report. If you do not get feedback after a certain period, a reasonable period, okay, for example, if you submit your report today, a draft, don't expect your draft to be finished checking by your supervisor by the next day or by 2 days after. Okay, give your supervisor ample time, enough time to check. Okay, so please be reasonable. But if you did not get any feedback, that's something that I think your coordinator should know about. Okay, because otherwise you, students, will be penalized by the panels, because the panels will say, okay, this is unacceptable, the quality of the report is not good, there's so much missing parts from your report. So, okay, you get poor marks basically, but it's not your fault because the draft was not being checked by your supervisor. So please let your coordinator knows if this happened, because you will be unfairly uh, penalized, okay, because you do not get the feedback required from your supervisor. Okay, so please, this is one of the, I think it's quite important for students to know, right? Okay, so let's go to the core content of our sharing session, which is the chapter 4 and 5. All right. If you notice, the faculty, they shared the template for your thesis, yes, but the content of the thesis basically depends on how you want to write your thesis or how you want to present your data. So usually there are two ways that students can choose. The first one is by using the conventional route, which is by just chapter 4, which is result and discussion, and writing chapter 5 conclusion. But there are some circumstances where the results produced by the students is quite a lot. Okay, so they split chapter 4 and chapter 5 into results and discussion, and then chapter 6 conclusion. So you can see there is an additional chapter over here. To be honest, so far I've seen just maybe one or two samples where students go for option B. Okay, because usually option B is reserved for PhD or master students. Okay, because they have a lot of data. Okay, but this is an option for you to choose if your data is too much and you cannot compile everything under one chapter. Okay, so it's up to you. Discuss with supervisor. Okay, which route you want to use, but usually option A is the standard version of the chapters in FYP report. Okay, all right. And before you begin anything, before you start writing, before you start your data, before you start preparing your presentation slide for your Viva, start with your rubric. I cannot emphasize this enough. Over the years, being a coordinator for FYP, as well as being the supervisor and being a panel, is quite disappointing, I would say, and it's quite frustrating when students lose mark easily because they did not refer to the rubric when preparing their assessment. Okay, rubric is the first thing that students should refer to when they are doing something, not just for FYP, for anything. If your assessment has a rubric with it, start with the rubric before you start the project. Okay, so this is an example from FYP1, which I'm sure you are aware because you're in FYP2 right now. Let's look at of course, we want to get the highest mark or the full mark, okay, which look at the criteria number 5. It has already been stated over here, how to get the full mark, the fullest mark, basically. So state more than 2 findings. So just give whatever that rubric asks for. Okay, I'm going to give you one simple example. Okay, if you go to the next one over here, for FYP2, okay, for result and discussion, chapter 4 and 5, you can see over here, it mentioned specifically superior ability to conduct investigation, analyzing, and interpreting data from 2 or more principles and knowledge of engineering principles. I'm going to show you how to do this in this presentation. Okay, but if you do not refer to this rubric, you will have no idea what is being expected from the students. Okay, this is for chapter 4 and 5. Okay, previously, okay, I'm not sure about the latest rubric, but previously, for example, there are marks for references, and the references specifically stated that for the full marks over here, number 5, you want to get full mark, you need to supply, or you need to have more than, for example, 50, or don't quote me on it, but I think more than 20 or 30 high quality references. So it says here, let's say 20. If the rubric asks for 20 references, try to give more than that. Okay, but quite a lot, majority of the students, unfortunately, they did not refer to the rubric, and they have only 5 or 10 references in their report. So when the panels, when I myself, when I look at the report, I have to deduct the marks. Instead of 5, the students probably got 2 or 3 out of 5. So you cannot afford to waste marks like that, especially for the parts that is so simple to score. Like references, abstract, for example. So rubrics is the first place that you should go when preparing your report. Okay. All right. So please ignore this because previously I presented this to FYP1 students as well. So you are currently in FYP2. All right. Okay. So my writing tips are as follows. Okay, how to write a good writing, how to write a good thesis. Okay, not just for FYP but for masters or PhD. First, you need a content. So in your content, the panels, your supervisor will look at the figures and tables. Okay, and the tables, of course, it needs to look professional. Okay, I'm going to share in this presentation how to create or to present a good table, a good figure. Okay, and your result should has the details and the detailed analysis of what you did, either experimental work or simulation work. Okay, and it has to be both implicit and explicit. So don't worry about the terminology here. I'm going to explain. I'm going to show you the example later on. Okay, when you analyze your result, you should elaborate. You should provide discussion on the result that you just highlighted. Okay, so for example, if you present a plot and you have a trend, for example, an increasing trend, for example, a temperature rise. So you cannot just simply say, okay, figure 1 shows the temperature rise over the period of the experimental work conducted. The end. You cannot do that. You cannot just state what is obvious. So the obvious one is the explicit. Explicit means something that is obvious. So implicit is something that is not obvious, and it has to come in the discussion and elaboration in the same paragraph. So why do you see the trend, the increasing trend over here? So you have to provide some explanation in terms of technical knowledge or maybe experimental influence variables involved, and so on and so forth. Okay, and avoid using long paragraph. I think that's the mistakes that students did, not just for undergraduates, for postgraduate as well. When you write a paragraph that is very, very long, it will be very, very difficult for the panels, for the reader. I make it as general as possible for the reader, for the audience to look for the information in the thesis. Okay, so avoid long paragraph. So my tips for students is usually between 4 to 5 lines maximum per paragraph. Okay, I'm going to share later on samples. You can see the difference between like students who followed my instruction and students who basically just write like a long, very long paragraph, which makes it very difficult to follow. Okay, and of course, the content similarity index is very, very important, which relates to plagiarism. Okay, and then in terms of structure, your report flow must be nice. Okay, nice here means people can follow step by step. For example, in literature review or in methodology, all the steps are laid out nicely. We can understand from, for example, 3.1 to 3.2, they are related. Okay, we can understand, okay, after you finish 3.1, you start 3.2. And more importantly, the language. As I said, we are not here to penalize students for poor language, but at least your writing should reflect that you are engineering students, because when you start working, even though you have a very good technical knowledge, but if you cannot translate that into a good writing for presentation purposes, it will be useless. So the writing here is important because you want people to know what you did, okay, why your work is important. Okay, so to help students, usually students can use Grammarly. And if you are stuck, if you keep on repeating, because I think this is the common problem with students, you don't have much vocabulary, so you keep on repeating the same words and over, So you can try to use synonym or thesaurus from online tools. Okay, you can use rephrasing, active or passive. So this should be enough to help you to get by writing in FYP. Okay, and of course, in formatting, they are all interdependent. You cannot write a good thesis, a good report without having all this. Okay, formatting is important as well because you need to make sure all the TOC, caption, cross-referencing styles, they are used accordingly. Okay, so at the end of this presentation, I'll try to address the elephant in the room, which is quite a big issue nowadays, but I think can help students to improve their thesis, okay, which I'm going to address at the end of this presentation. Okay, as for the writing sequence, this is the suggestion of my tips for students. Always start with your data, meaning that once you finish your work, start translating your work into figures and tables. That's the first step. Because without tables, without figures, it will be very difficult for you to start writing the first line of chapter 3 or chapter 4 or chapter 5. Because chapter 3 is methodology, so you need to have figures to start explaining, okay, these are the steps that I did. Chapter 4, for example, figure 4.1 shows blah, blah, blah. So without figure, it's quite impossible for you to start. So always start with figure. So once you arrange everything, okay, you know, all right, this should be in 4.1, this should be in section 4.2. Okay, then you start with methodology because that's the thing that you did already. So start developing a methodology. Okay, then you start your writing for results and discussion. Okay, and of course for chapter 3. Okay, as you can see over here, the results and methodology, they're depending on your tables, your figures, your diagrams, your plots. Without figures, without diagram, trust me, it will be quite difficult for you to start writing. What should I write? You'll get mental block. Okay, so then you proceed with conclusion, introduction, then at the last one, okay, then you write your abstract and title. Do not write your abstract before you have your methodology or your figures. Okay, abstract is like a summary of the work that you did. So it should be the last piece of paragraph that you write in your report. Okay, so in terms of terminology, so you can say that your data or figures over here is like all the essential spices, spice or salt and sugar. You need all that. And the methodology is the step by steps. Okay, for example, the terminology that I use here is the cooking. Okay, and methodology is like the brain of your thesis. It needs to be robust. It has to be complete. It has to be detailed. Okay, and your result and discussion is like what you want to put in your cooking. Okay, if you just put, for example, one fish, then you know the taste. The people will only taste of fish. But if you put prawn, if you put seafood, you put meat, and then you put all those ingredients together, then your meals will have a lot of flavors. Okay, and then of course, conclusion, introduction. If you see over here, basically, I'm trying to say it's just goreng. Okay, so you have bawang, you have the onions. Okay, saute them. Okay, try to, when you goreng, try to be reasonable. Don't try to write a long paragraph, because once you start writing a long paragraph or long information, you tend to make mistakes because you try to drag the information. Okay, and finally, the abstract. The abstract is basically you just mesh everything together based on the content that you have. All right. So in result, basically, you include the illustration and figures, include only data of primary importance. Okay, I'm going to highlight the second point over here. This used to be the case before, but not anymore. Okay? And then you highlight the main findings, and it should be clear and easy to understand. So I think this is quite important. It has to be clear and easy to understand. Okay, your sentences must be simple. Don't use bombastic words. Okay, but how about fail results, or if you have too many results? Okay, for my students, I encourage my students to write down failed results as well, because that's part of the process. Okay, Because once you highlight the fail result, hopefully the next batch of students who are doing or who will be doing something similar to the work that you are doing will notice, okay, this is the problem, the issues, okay, avoid these issues because the other students already tried and found that it's not working. So that's why it's important to highlight fail results as well. Okay, if you have too many results, for example, put some of them in appendix. So that's the purpose of appendix. If your report is too long, you don't want the content to be too convoluted, too confusing. So you try to separate some of the result that I'm not going to say not important, but the supporting result, you put them in the appendix so that people only focus what is important in the main body of the thesis. Okay. So this is from Elsevier, which is one of the world-renowned journal publication or journal publisher. So they highlighted this long ago. Okay, why it's important or why it's time for researcher to publish failures or failure results. Okay, all right. Next for the discussion, okay, it has or it needs to contain the interpretation of the results. Basically, if you are a seller, you need to sell your data. You need to sell to people. Okay, why the result that or the work I'm doing is important. So show people the work that you did. Okay, the discussion okay should correspond to basically over here. If you look over here, do not ignore the work in disagreement with yours. Over the years, from my observations, students take it too simple. For example, they just did some work, for example, experimental work or simulation work, and they just present as it is, meaning that you conduct some work. Okay, these are my work, basically. These are the plots. Okay, these are the result. It gives no substantive credit, basically, to your work if you just present your data without comparing, without validating your data with other publications, with work that has been done previously. So it's very, very important for you to compare your result with someone else's. That's the key here. Okay, I'm going to show all this in a bit. Okay, and of course you discuss the limitation. Of course, we cannot do everything in FYP or any research work. We need to specify the limitation of the work. Okay, all right. So again, especially for simulation work, or those doing numerical modeling, it's very, very important for you to have validation against some published data. Okay, all right. Okay, so this is how basically the conclusion. Conclusion basically should be clear. It justifies or highlights the importance of your research and suggests future experiments. So, for example, if you look over here, the tense that they use is in terms of the past tense because it summarizes everything that you did. So conclusion should be in past tense and it highlights the importance, the core content. Okay, and it has to be quantitative. I'm going to highlight in a bit. It has to be quantitative. What does quantitative means? You need to provide or highlight key values in terms of mathematical numbers. Okay, the result shows 20% increase compared to something blah blah blah. Okay? The trend shows the trend shows a good improvement by about 1% compared to the work done by Anas, for example. So it has to be in terms of quantitative. You need to give a mathematical value over there. Okay. So when you submit your draft, okay, you basically have a car and you're confident, okay, this is the best work that I've done. But more often than not, this is what will happen. So expect this. Okay. Supervisors, they have a lot of ideas. They want to improve your thesis. Okay. If you do the thesis by yourself without getting input from your friends, from your supervisor, you'll think that that's the best work that you did. And that's normal. But once you give your draft to someone else to read, there will always be some input that you can consider. Okay, how can you improve your draft or your work? Okay, so the journey to submit FYP report is not easy. you have a lot of hurdles. You have your supervisor, panel 1, panel 2, you have FYP coordinator, you have your turning in, you have to make sure the overall report similarity is below 20%, if I'm not mistaken, and time. Time is probably the most important issues or the most important challenges in your FYP. So regarding time, you might say that, okay, you have 14 weeks in FYP2. Okay, most students, when they are doing FYP1, they think, okay, I'm not too worried in FYP1 because I have FYP2 to finish everything. And that's the problem, and that's the issue. I always emphasize to my students, okay, I know this is like, you already passed that stage. Okay, you're already in FYP2, halfway there already, but in retrospect, if we think back, okay, in the future, if you got a project, the given time duration will never be enough. Okay, my students, for example, when they're in FYP1, I already emphasized you have to do like a 30% extra work that covers plan for FYP2, including work during the holiday if you want to submit your FYP work on time in FYP2. Okay, so for example, if FYP2, if you look over here, usually this is the tentative. Usually, you have to confirm with your supervisor and also your coordinator. But you have until roughly about week 11 to finish or to submit your draft to your supervisor. And then you get maybe a week after that, you get feedback from your supervisor, you improve, and then you submit your thesis to your coordinator and to prepare for Viva. This is the plan. Okay. The issue is every year, every semester, we'll have students who haven't even started their lab work yet. Okay, especially those who are doing experimental work, because of the broken equipment, because of the long queues. Because, for example, when you are doing lab work, you have to use other facilities, for example, or you have to queue behind postgraduate students. That happens. Just imagine sometimes in week 10, there are students who are yet to start their work. Just imagine that. Okay. And this is what happens basically. And this is the message that I got from students basically. So if you read this email, basically, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say over here. Okay. Okay, so this is not a good tone from students. If you read the message or the email, it looks as if the students are giving instruction, demanding from the lecturers, okay, to sign. So it's not your supervisor's fault. It's not your panel's fault if you did not follow the timeline. Okay, you have to understand the due date given is the due date, means that's the last day for you to submit your report. It doesn't mean you have to submit on the last day. No. It means you have like how many weeks before that to prepare your report. You can submit your report early. Okay, due date means the last day or the last time, the last period for you to submit your work. It doesn't mean that's the time that you have to submit. So that's why I said give your supervisor, give your panels ample time for them to check your results, your thesis. Okay, you cannot submit your. This is the basically we hear these stories all the time. The submission is at 12 o'clock. 7 o'clock, students will message the lecturers, the supervisors. Okay, sir, please sign this report, demanding. They ask, okay, please sign this report. I have to submit by 12 o'clock. Your first submission to your supervisor, your draft is at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then you expect me to finish checking everything by, I don't know, maybe 1 hour, and then you want to do improvement and then submit your coordinator. So that's not how it works. Okay, so you have to understand you need to give enough time for your panels, for your supervisor to check your work. Okay. All right. So in terms of plagiarism, which is, I think, I'm going to cover just briefly. This should be something that students also should know, because from the first year you have learned basically when you submit something that doesn't belong to you, if you were caught, okay, is considered as plagiarism and is part of the academic dishonesty, and you can be penalized. You can either be suspended, you can get F, or worse, you basically terminated from your study. Okay, so things that can plagiarize are as follows. You can have a look at on the screen. Students usually think they are better than lecturers in terms of cheating. Okay, but trust me, we were once a student as well, so we know what students were thinking. Okay, even though you have a lot of tools at your disposal nowadays, we understand that, but don't think that lecturers are stupid. So that's my advice to you. If you think of cheating, think again. Okay, and again, there's the elephant in the room where basically provide challenges to the lecturers, to the supervisors, and also to the student nowadays. Okay, what the elephant in the room is, I'll mention this in a bit. Okay, so to avoid plagiarism, always rephrasing, always give credit to the authors. That's all you need to do. Okay, all right. Tenses, we're not going to touch this in details, but there are tables everywhere that you can have a look. For example, this one is summarized basically in abstract. It should be in past tense or present tense. In result, past tense, present, when to use that. Discussion, present or past tense. A simple table like this can help you a lot in terms of your writing. Okay. All right. So we discussed this already. Okay. Basically, in terms of chapter 4, results and discussion, there are three main components that I suggest and I look for in any thesis. First, you need to present and describe your plots, your diagrams. Okay, so you have a diagram, as I said. Okay, you present what is obvious. Okay, so that's the first thing that you need to do. Then, after you present what is obvious, you discuss why the trend is being observed. Why you think that contribute to the observation? Okay, why that happened basically. So you discuss, you explain, and then you compare that with what is being done by other people, or what is being done with previous result. For example, you have 5. For example, if you have got 5 results, result A, of course, you make some explanation, elaboration. Okay, but once you get into result 5, for example, now you have 4 results before. So you make a comparison. Okay, result 5 shows an improvement of 20% compared to result 4 of 3. Because of what? Okay, so these 3 components should be in your paragraph. Okay, not your report, in your paragraph for each diagram, for each plots, for each tables. Okay, all right. So, okay, ignore this. All right. So again, ignore this. This is again from FYP 2. Okay, just quickly over here. Because for FYP 1, in chapter 4, it's just expected result. Okay, right now, once we're in FYP 2, what you have as expected result before in FYP 1 can now be moved into chapter 3 or maybe chapter 2. Okay, what was there in FYP 1 as chapter 4 doesn't have to be in chapter 4 for your FYP 2. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say, because now you have a lot more results. Okay, some of it, okay, from your work, from your previous work in FYP 1, you can move that. Okay, move that into maybe methodology. Okay, all right. Okay, so this again refer to the rubric, what is being asked, okay, from you, so that you understand. Okay, these are the things that you need to address. Okay, so this is what I said just now. For example, you need to have these 3 components: description, discussion, and comparison. Okay, and if you got the first result, okay, you provide all these 3 for the first one. Okay, once you discuss the next result, you try to relate with what you just presented in the thesis. Okay, you relate result in chapter B with result in chapter result chapter B. You relate with the result B, the one that you are discussing right now, with the previous result. Okay, similarly, if you got a lot more results, you try to interrelated them. Okay, so that there is like a continuation from one paragraph to another paragraph. So you try to support, you try to argue, you try to compare the results. This is, we are talking just about your results, but you have to remember, you have to validate your result with other results or published results as well. Okay, so take a couple of seconds to read this. So this basically an example taken from my students' thesis. So have a look at how we integrate the present and describe, discussion, and comparison, okay, within these two diagrams. Okay. So the first one, it explains the behavior or the what is happening on the diagram. Okay, the ballistic contour. The second one, it shows basically it doesn't have to be in order. So over here, you can see the explanation is over here, and the comparison or this description over here of the behavior is number 3 here. Okay. Similarly, if you look at this table, so it has first the description. Okay, the calculation was performed on 4 sets of data, and then why this happened, the behavior, the reduction in velocity or the increase of velocity, okay, due to limitation in blah blah blah. Okay, and why this happened or the comparison. Okay, more, for example, it's stated over here, turbines is increasing the power that can be extracted from the sea. So it has all these components in one paragraph for each of the tables, diagrams, plots that you presented. Okay, the same one is over here. Okay, so as you can see, this paragraph, you can see they are very, very short. So it's easy for the audience to read and to get the idea that you are trying to convey. Okay, so similarly, you can see over here, all this, you can see here, it give contradiction, comparison between the results. Okay, if you got 4 diagrams, 4 plots over here, make a comparison. So you cannot just give one liner like, okay, the result shows velocity reduction after the temperature reach blah 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 blah. Just one liner like that. So you cannot do that. Okay, it has to be, okay, why you the velocity reduction is observed. You have to give reason for that. Okay, so if we look over here, can I get some response from students? Do you notice any issues or any problems with these plots? Can you just type your answers in the chat box just to make sure that everyone is not sleeping or you are paying attention? Can I get some response? What do you think is the issues, or maybe there's no issues with this plot or diagram? Anyone? No legend. Thank you, Shahira. Yes. So the issues here is there is no legend, okay, for this diagram. So without legend, how can we know what does the line, the blue line or the red line represent? That's the problem. Okay. Okay. And the next tips that I can share with students is regarding the plotting diagram. Okay, how to plot a professional looking diagram. I encourage students, my students previously, to create their diagrams using MATLAB or RStudio. There's nothing wrong using Excel, which I'm going to highlight in a bit. But you can see over here, the left diagrams, these 2 diagrams, they are plotted. They were plotted using MATLAB, and the right, the one on the right here is using Excel. You can see the difference. Okay. If you want to have a very good diagram, a brilliant, beautiful diagram, you need to do something basically more than what Excel can provide. Okay, but it doesn't mean that Excel is useless or is not useful. So you can see over here, the one that I'm showing right now, this one was created by my student using Excel. Okay, and you can see it's quite different than the one showing here. So when you create a diagram, first try to avoid or remove the border over here, the plotting border. We don't want to see the border. Okay? That's the first one. And to create a diagram like this, and this one is from Excel, first, you never copy and paste plots directly from Excel. Once you create your diagram, you need to modify, you need to edit the one that was created on Excel, because the default Excel plot is the worst, trust me. Okay, it's basically it's not clear usually, and the default color is gray. Okay, so if you look over here, the line has been changed from gray, the default color gray, into black. You can see the difference already. And then you enlarge the font size for the axis, for the legends and titles, and change everything, line color and the font color to black. That's how you get a diagram like this, a plot like this. Otherwise, if you maintain the one that we see over here, at the back here, it looks boring, I would say. Okay, so, and you don't want boring in your presentation. Okay, right. And the other helpful tips that I can share for chapter 4 is to integrate the use of horizontal layout. Okay, most students, they are not sure whether this is allowed or not sure when to use this. My suggestion is to use this horizontal layout. You can see over here. So this is vertical, the standard one. You use this when you want to highlight something that is important, especially your plots, your critical plots. Okay. So if you want to arrange your plots, basically you want to enlarge them, you want them to be as big as possible. And for example, you have A, B, and C. So put them in the one page and then use horizontal layout. Okay. Similarly for flowchart. Flowchart doesn't have to be vertical. As I think I've showed at the start, from the start of this presentation, your flowchart, it can be horizontal. Okay, and use horizontal layout, horizontal page to fit everything. Okay, so be brave. You can use that. You can do that. Okay, conclusion. It has to be basically avoid one-liner macam ni. For example, a method for blah 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 has been developed in this way. Just a simple explanation. You don't want to do this for your conclusion. Okay, so you want to explain in detail how you solve the problem that you just highlighted and how you relate to the set objective. That's very important. And as I highlighted before, you need to provide quantitative value. Basically, what you have calculated, what the result that you got, you want to mention that in the conclusion. Okay, for example, the use of blah 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 has increased the accuracy of the measurement by a certain percentage compared to the previous studies, blah blah blah. Okay, you need to provide some quantitative value. Let's look at example of do's for the conclusion. Okay, have a look at this conclusion project summary. Okay. Okay, you can see that this is a very good summary or conclusion, because first, the paragraph used is very, very short, and for each paragraph, this student dedicated the objective achievement in that specific paragraph. So paragraph 1 is for the first objective. It highlights the important factors that involve. Paragraph 2 for the second one, and finally the third objective for the second paragraph, and for the third one. Okay, so it highlights the important takeout from your work. Okay, so this is done to investigate the point of failure. Okay, for the first objective, experimental and theoretical stress concentration values are plotted, blah blah blah. Okay, so and the last one, the third objective, percentage error can be found. Okay, maybe these students can include or integrate, highlight what is the percentage error that was found. Okay, but overall, each paragraph, it addresses the objectives set for the project. If you got 2 objectives, maybe you highlight 2 in 2 paragraphs. If you got more, okay, just adapt correspondingly. All right. Similarly, if you look over here, you provide recommendation. Please do not just provide one sentence. Okay. For next study, it is suggested that the student use a different material for the experimental work, the end. So when you suggest something, you need to provide explanation or elaboration why that suggestion is important. Okay, you need to mention. Okay, for example, a different material is suggested because it has not been tested. The use is still minimal. it's quite for example, maybe it's expensive, so maybe you need to change another materials. So provide explanation. So if you look over here for future recommendation, this is a good one because each recommendation is accompanied by elaboration and explanation. So one paragraph each. So this is a good one. Okay, but it doesn't have to be in paragraphs. Okay, sometimes if everything is in paragraph, it can be quite boring. So you can use bullet point, for example, integrate bullet points in your work. Okay, all right. Okay, what you don't want to, what things that you want to avoid basically is something like this. Okay, have a look. And can I get some comments in the chat box? What is the issues with the recommendation provided in this example? Can anyone, can I get some response from students? What is the issues that you think relates to this paragraph? Anyone? No comments? It's not specific to whom they are pointing to. Okay, that's acceptable. Yes. First, it's not specific to specific to who they are pointing to. The other explanation is that you want to point or you want to highlight recommendation that relates to your work, even though this recommendation is not wrong. Okay, but it's not related. That's one thing, and it's not a good recommendation because it did not give some idea on how the project or the work can be further enhanced and improved. So that's the issue here. You want something that is related to your work. Okay. So next one. What's the issues with this one? Can I get some response other than Shahir, just to make sure that everyone is still alive, still listening? Okay, what's the issue with this recommendation? Anyone? No? Okay, yes, try. Anything that you want to highlight? Okay, if you don't want to type, you can just unmute. Please go ahead. No one? Okay. So if you look over here, the recommendation is the school. Okay, this is from previous one. The school can buy new UTM machines and provide maintenance for the old machine due to the collaboration. Okay, again, this is not a wrong recommendation, but it's not related to the project. And we try to avoid recommendation that is negative, means it provide negative scope or negative image to the faculty or to the school. Okay, we want something that is positive enhancement, positive recommendation to improve the work of your project. Okay, right. So when the one can be implemented and be used, why did a new mission when the new one can be implemented? Okay. As I said, we need to provide a positive recommendation, okay, not the negative recommendation. Okay, thank you, Shauki. All right, so some of the do's that I can summarize in here. Of course, this is not comprehensive. Your aim is to show the outcome of a one-year project, and this is not just for chapter 4 and 5. Of course, the chapter 4 is the heart, the main part of your thesis. So you need to show that the results presented is worth 1 year punya project. Okay, and I'll discuss in a bit. Okay, then what does it mean? How long should my thesis be, for example? Okay, and for good plots, try use MATLAB or RStudio, or at least you modify the default Excel plotting. Okay, when you create your plots, please do not copy as it is. Okay, a good report should also consist of statistical analysis, and this is the quantitative value that I mentioned: percentage increase, percentage decrease. Use simple words. We don't need bombastic words. Okay. Tenses, again, we are not like, we do not check the English in FYP, but at least make sure that people can understand what you are trying to relate. Okay, what you're trying to convey. Use landscape orientation or horizontal layout, okay, to improve. Basically, if you want to highlight something that is important, just make it big, put it in horizontal or landscape orientation. Use Grammarly, use thesaurus to avoid repeating the same words, and be creative. If you have basically presented 5 same plots, okay, it will be quite boring. So integrate, use tables, use for example, quantum plot, plotting plot, diagram. Be creative in presenting your data. And writing is a skill. It's not easy. So what I can suggest is to try this method called stupid writing, where you spend, for example, 30 minutes, 1 hour every day. You just write something without thinking. So for example, you just open, you got chapter 3, all the tables, all the figures ready. You don't have to worry about tenses. You don't have to worry about the grammatical issues. Just free flowing writing. You just write something that came to your mind. And from there, you get some ideas on what to start after that. Improve. Okay, time to time. Okay, all right. Do's and then now don'ts. First, the common one is forgetting consistency in terms of the decimal places. And then plagiarism, that happens a lot, so please avoid this. Common elements of the figures, please make sure they are figure numbering, title, legend, label, so on. Most of the students usually they just provide one liner. As I said, for example, this figure shows the work being done by blah blah blah, that increase in blah blah blah. So we don't want something that is too short. So please provide a proper discussion on the plots and diagrams, everything that is presented. Please make sure that all the figures and the tables are cross-referenced. Make sure everything that is presented must be referred to or cited to in your paragraph. Avoid last-minute writing. Writing is a skill, as I said. You should be start writing from now on. Okay, start stupid writing. Okay, and avoid using long paragraph. And the issues with lack of result, I think this can only be addressed by your supervisor. So if you're not sure whether your thesis is ready or not, or whether it's enough or not, you have to discuss with your supervisor. Okay, so my advice is you make mistakes all the time, you learn from them and move on. So I think that's the end of part A, chapter 4 and 5. So I think we are ready for part B. Okay, but before we look at the samples from past students, just 1 second. I think Dr. Zamzuri just shared the link for the attendance. So please fill up the links. I think I'm going to wait for 30 seconds. So please fill up the attendance right now so that you don't miss it out. Okay, so while you are filling up the attendance, just before we move to part B, examples from your seniors, the common questions that I normally get is basically student ask how long or in number of pages, how long or how many pages should your thesis be, or should your thesis have? Is it 50? Is it hundreds? Okay, and for me, this relates to the questions of quantity versus quality. I cannot say a 50 pages thesis is a bad thesis, or a 200 pages thesis is a good thesis. I think that's wrong. But over the years, from experience, for FYP thesis, we're talking about FYP. If your thesis is roughly about 50 to 60 pages long, from the first page, from the cover page until the end, if it's only about 50 to 60, then for me, there's something wrong. You don't expect to get a good result. A good thesis usually contain more than that. Okay, I'm going to show in a bit basically the samples from your seniors. Average good thesis usually is between 80 to 100 pages long. Okay, because for 60 pages long, you don't have much. Basically, you are not sharing, you are not providing much information, so it's just not enough. But that's why I'm saying this cautiously. I'm not saying that 50 page is like a no-go. Some courses, basically, a 50 page is more than enough. So, for example, when I was doing my PhD, I saw a thesis that very, very basically, I think if we can put it in numbers, probably about 67 pages long for PhD thesis, but it's qualified to be a PhD thesis because that contains analytical derivation, mathematical derivation. So compared to normal thesis of PhD, for example, this take about 200, 300 pages, a 700, a 70 pages long thesis can be a good thesis if it is substantial, if it contains the quality in there. Okay, but in general for FYP, I would say if you are in 50 to 60 pages region, you should aim to provide more. But again, it depends on the work that you are doing, and if your supervisor is happy with that, I think that's fine. Okay. Okay, and please don't forget about FYP timeline. Even though on paper you have 14 weeks, but in reality you don't have 14 weeks. Okay, because you need to submit by week 10 or week 11, and then you need to improve based on the feedback received. So, as I said, writing is a skill. It's not everyone has a different skills or different writing capability. So you need to start writing from now. Okay, you don't have to write a perfect thesis, but at least make sure it is enough for you to graduate, or you are happy with your work for 1 year. Okay, and the elephant in the room that I want to highlight in this presentation is the use of AI assisted writing technologies. um, I'm pretty sure everyone by now have heard the AI chatbot such as the ChatGPT, Google Bot, Microsoft Bing Chat, and so on and so forth. There are quite a few others options out there. So the questions that you should ask yourself is, should you or should you not use these AI assisted writing technologies? I think for FYP level, that's a very, very difficult question to ask. I think the school or the university itself, we still don't have the guideline for that. So I just want to share. Basically, this is from Elsevier, which is a publisher for journals for academics. For your lecturers, basically, once they publish paper, they have to adhere or to follow the guidelines provided. So if you can see over here, they do not say that AI chatbots, for example, is prohibited or prevented. They did not explicitly say that, but they do provide guidelines. It can be used, but under certain conditions, which is only to improve readability and language. So if you can see over here, should use this technology to improve readability and language. And when you do that, okay, the guidelines says that you should do that by still providing the human oversight, meaning that you use that system, but you have to double check the details of the results provided. Okay, so you cannot just put some data and whatever that you get from the system, you copy and paste into your thesis. So that's not how it works. Okay, but as I said, this thing is still new. There is no detailed guidelines by our university even the program itself from the faculty, from my understanding. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. So my 2 cents, the first one is for you to talk to your supervisor and make sure your supervisor is aware if you intend or you plan to use these tools. Remember, ChatGPT is a tool, and as a lot of tools, it depends on the input from the human, which is you. So there is a terminology in computer science where they say garbage in, garbage out. So whatever that you put as your input, okay, if your input is garbage means wrong, then the output will be garbage as well, which is something that is not beneficial or not related to what you are doing. Okay, so be careful in what you are planning to do. Um, for me personally, if you're planning to write a new or a complete paragraph with the help of AI, do not do that because you will fail in turning in similarity index. Okay, because the AI they generate the information based on the available information online. So once the turning in is processed, they will detect the similarity from the documents that the AI took the information from. But if you're planning to rephrasing and paraphrasing your own sentences, where, for example, you have the whole thesis ready, you have written the paragraphs, and now you just want to improve the readability, then I think that's reasonable. But again, do not proceed without knowing what you are doing, and please consult your supervisor. I think that's the most important part. Okay, so before you going to regret your decision, talk to your supervisor about whatever that you want to do. Okay, so I think that's the end of part A. So let's start with part B. Um, shall we get a 5 minutes break, Dr. Zam, Dr. Tan? Okay ke?
Okey, boleh.
Boleh ya? Okay, so let's take a 5 minutes break. Uh, apa nama? If you got any questions, please just leave your message in the text box. Okay, so all right, so let's take a 5 minutes break. Yeah, all right. Thank you, everyone. Yes, we'll continue in sini pukul 4 pagi lah, pukul 11 Malaysia. Okay. Okay, kita continue balik. Alright, so far tak ada soalan, student semua faham kot. Semua boleh dapat A kot lah untuk FYP report. Okay, alright, so let's have a look at the example report from your seniors. If you got any questions again, please let me know. Alright, okay. So right, so hopefully everyone can see the screen that I'm sharing right now. So this is an example of a real document from past students. I just want to highlight, I'm not sharing, I'm not going to say that, okay, this document is bad or not good or something like that. No, I'm just going to share the comments that I've made on these documents based on the feedbacks and of course based on the rubrics provided at the time. Some of these documents are quite old, maybe 2-3 years old. Some of them are quite recent. So don't pay attention on that. I'm just going to focus on the comments that I provide specifically for chapter 4 and 5. Okay. So, all right. So let's look at this, the first one. Okay. The comments that I provide over here. Okay. Some students, they like to write down introduction on each chapter, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, there is a 4.1 introduction. I personally don't think that's appropriate or that's needed to be done. You can do that, it's not wrong, but introduction is written to provide an overview of the whole chapter. So if your chapter is very long, for example, you might want to give some idea to the reader of what to be expected. That's fine. But for FYP thesis, the results or the chapters usually are not too long. So introduction usually is not needed, and you can just integrate with the overall section anyway. Okay, so if you want to write it down, it's not wrong, but I personally don't think is needed. Okay, and as I highlighted before, when you have a plot, you need to show your analysis. You need to give explicit discussion, and then you need to elaborate, okay, why that happened, and you have to relate with the thing that you have learned before or comparison with previous data, okay, previous result, for example. Okay, okay, so some comments, okay, over here, for example, whenever symbols or equations are involved, you have to use math editor in Words document. Please do not write down something like this. So you need to use math or mathematics editor, and then use it to make it the equation proper in terms of variables. Okay, A is blah blah blah. You need to define, okay, the variables that you use. What is A? What is D? Because A might be area in this case, but A can be something else in another experimental work. And when you use equations, make sure it is accompanied by the equation numbering. So if this is the first one, so 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, so on and so forth. Okay. So as I said, avoid writing down as it is. You have to use math editor, and please make sure, if you look over here, do not use image as your equations. So if you got any equations, okay, a very long or very short, it doesn't matter the length of the equations. You have to type in math editor. Never ever copy and paste the equations from online or from other paper, and then you paste it here as image. Never do that. Okay, so always type in your equations properly. Okay, and of course you need to define the variables, as I said. Okay, and this is again an examples of a plot produced by students. You can see it's not wrong, okay, but it's not great either. It's a very simple diagram. So you need to make sure you present a plot, a data, a diagram that can capture the attention of your reader. In this case, your supervisor and your panels. Okay, so that's why, as I said, I suggest using R or MATLAB, but it doesn't have to be. You can use Excel, but make sure you modify the default setting. Okay, all right. Blah blah blah. Okay, you can see that over here. In terms of the discussion or elaboration, it's not much. So just what, 2 sentences that give a general overview of the plots is not enough. Okay, so you need to provide, as I said, some analysis, something that is explicit and implicit and comparison with works that has been done previously. Okay, you can see that all the paragraph, this is way too short. I mentioned that we need to have a short paragraph, but this is way too short. It's not enough to give information about the work that you are doing to the audience. Okay, so again, the problems over here, there's no legend, and think about your audience. So in this case, just imagine the one checking your thesis is a 60-year-old professor. Okay, do you think we can see the marker that the student did over here? That's way too small. Okay? And over here, if you look over here, it says here, this is figure 4 point something. Never use manual editing. So there are tools available. Use cross-referencing in words. Okay, in order for you, use cross-referencing punya tools to make sure that all the figures and tables are properly cited in your paragraph, so that when you edit your thesis based on the comments given by panels and supervisor, it will be automatically updated. Okay, you don't have to do it manually. Okay, and when you write down the caption for your figure, make sure the caption reflects or give some information about the figure or the plots. So for example, figure 4.8 SN curve. That's way too short. It does not give enough information for the audience to understand the importance of this figure. Okay? So janganlah terlalu short. You have to make sure give not too long but not too short for the caption. Okay. All right. Okay. Again, you can see over here in terms of consistency. Okay. First, as I said, try to look professional. Remove the border. And ini kalau kita tengok, these students, they use the default setting in Excel. So you can see that the gray color kan, is too obvious. It's not clear on the paper. So similarly, tengok, some of the figures are quite big, some of them quite small. So the consistency is not good. Okay? Just think about this document as a representation of yourself. So if you did a good job, then when the reader read it, the panels read it, they will understand, okay, this is a good work from the students in terms of the research work as well as the thesis writing. Okay, all right. So the general comments that I had for this one, lacking details, need more analysis and elaboration. Okay, as you can see, some of the paragraphs are too short. Okay, and it did not mention basically how this result relates to the stated objective in this chapter. Okay, and there's no discussion at all provided by the student on chapter 4. Okay, and if you notice as well, there are only 9 figures over here, and there are no tables at all. So when you have this little information, so as a panel, as a reader, I know something is not right lah. Basically, there's too little information being shared. So usually it reflects the work that you did for 1 year. So is it enough? Is the work conducted for the past 1 year, is it enough to be basically presented as FYP work over here? Okay, is it enough to get A, for example? Okay, all right, conclusion. Basically, don't try avoid repeating the same information over and over again. Okay, for example, in this case, the student, they copy and paste exactly from the one paragraph in chapter 1. Okay, recommendation for future project. This is an example that I shared in the presentation just now. You want to propose something that's related to your project. Okay, so something that is useful for further study of the title of the work that you did. Okay, all right. Okay, and you can see that this is FYP2 thesis, by the way, the final thesis. The students only got 10 references. So as I said, a good thesis usually has 20 or 30 references in it. Okay, so from here, it reflects back to the chapter 2, which is literature review, okay, which reflects, basically, it means this is not a good thesis. Okay, by the way, if you look over here, my comments, this thesis basically was provided by me in the template given. So these students did not even update the list of references given that these students use in chapter 2 of the whole thesis. Okay, so this is from a template. So it shows the attitude of the students. Basically, the students did not even care to update or to check page by page in the thesis. So this is an example of a real FYP report submitted by your seniors, by your students. Okay, all right. Let's go to the another one. Okay, this one is quite recent, I think from past year. Okay, so let's go to chapter 4. Okay, you can see, I think this one is quite good. We can see that over here, the students, the thesis is about 90 pages long. So 90 pages is usually the sweet spot. Quite good, quite nice. You can see it has a lot of diagrams. Okay, quite nice as well, quite detailed. Okay, but if you want to show something, for example, over here, make sure that the image that you put in your thesis is of clear quality. Okay, if the caption is important, make sure it's readable. All right, so there is the one tool that students usually use, which is I cannot remember the name of the tool, or from Windows. Is it snipping tools? I always suggest, or I always encourage, I always advise students to avoid using snipping tools. Instead, use print screen. Okay, make the screen as large as possible, and then paste it into Paint, and then you have to save it again. Quite a lot of process, but the image quality will be better than using snipping tools. Okay, so that's one advice that I can share with you guys. You can see that here we cannot read, okay, the text that's highlighted over here. If it's important, or if it's not important, then just crop and remove the text. Okay, you can see that in terms of the number of numbering is quite good, a lot of figures. Okay, but you can see that still students mostly, I'm not sure the right term that I can use to highlight why students don't want to use this, but by editing this figure, it will look much better on the thesis. Okay, you see that using the default setting, the gray color, it looks boring. It's not like tak menonjol lah, dia tak naik. So it's not capturing the attentions of the audience. And for example, over here, we can't even see the legend clearly. Okay, so please make sure all things, because you have a lot of spaces over here, you can increase the size of the font for the legends, for the axes, and also for the titles. Okay, all right. And when in the text, when you want to refer or cite something, please make sure be specific. Okay, figure above. Above, we got figure 4.8, 4.7, and other figures. So be specific what figure you are referring to. Okay, again, the issues that I have this is regarding the caption. Sometimes you can put the captions along with the figure numbering, but sometimes you can just integrate the caption. If it's quite long, you can just integrate within the subset over here. Okay, again, you can see the difference between figures that has been edited and the original figures from Excel. Okay, it's quite boring. Okay, I think that's the only word that I can use for now. Okay, but in terms of, okay, one other thing that I can suggest, if you are not using official licensed product, please make sure you are being careful, crop or do not mention that in your thesis. Okay, and since right now we have students edition, so you use that, that's fine. But if you're not using official license, please avoid putting that in your diagram, in your thesis. Okay. Overall, if you look over here, you can see the the contents in chapter 4 is quite substantial, quite a lot substantive. So he did a good. The student did a good job. So you can see here, for example, in terms of the equations, everything is being labeled, and the math editor was used, so it's quite nice. Okay, are the tables. Okay, so overall it's quite okay. So my general comments for this one: so improve figures, image quality. As we can see, it's not that clear, it's not that good. But even though this thesis contains a lot of figures, tables, critical analysis and discussion are missing. So students basically just put, okay, table 4.5 shows blah, blah, blah. That's it. Okay, so we need analysis and discussion to make it clear, okay, because that's part of your learning process, because we want to understand, we want to check, okay, for the past 4 years, what have you learned? So you have to integrate whatever that you have learned from courses over the years, and then try to reflect that in your FYP work. Okay, all right. So conclusion, please relate to objective achievement. So basically, if you got 2 or 3 objective, specify, okay, 1 paragraph specific for 1 objective. Okay, so avoid, okay, this is for me is quite long. For me, you can split this into 2 smaller paragraph. Okay, so mesti objective, in conclusion, you have to relate to your objective achievement. Okay, all right. So in terms of recommendation, it's quite good. You can see that it's quite detailed, ada elaborations more. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go quickly for the next one. I don't want to take too much of your time. Just 1 second. Okay. Chapter 4. All right. Okay, you can see that again, what I'm sharing right now is the final thesis that I received as an examiner. So I'm a panel. I was a panel here, and this is the thesis that I received to be checked and to be graded. You can see that these students did not even bother to put chapter 4 into a new page. Okay, the formatting is out. And then avoid using something that is vague or not clear. So if you want to refer to figure, be specific. Table 4.1 refers to blah, blah, blah. Okay, and please use cross-referencing. Okay, and interestingly, I'm going to go quickly for this thesis or this chapter 4. There is basically, these students have a lot of results, a lot of figures, a lot of plots, but there is no paragraph to explain the analysis and the discussion. So you can see here, for example, if I go quickly, a lot of figures, okay, but there are no discussion, no analysis at all. Okay, you see that there are plots. It's quite nice. Okay, even though they, you can see the gray color is still being used. Okay, there are a lot of figures. Okay, but not much of analysis. So it's quite interesting. I'm not sure what happened, but so suddenly it provides the summary of everything. It has about, I think, 8 plots, yeah, 8 figures and a few tables. So my comments finally for chapter 4, a lot of figures, but critical analysis and discussion were not provided, okay, at all. And of course, if you use unlicensed product, please make sure you avoid mentioning or avoid stating that. Okay, so, and chapter 4, chapter 5 must relate to your objective. So if your objective basically mentioned A, B, C, it has to be clear in chapter 4 and also in conclusion that you did address that and what are the results of that. Okay, so in this case, there is no, basically, I cannot find anywhere about objective 2, in this case, the optimization of something. Okay, so, and conclusion, for example, in this case, 2 pages long of conclusion. My comment was very poor. Need to summarize properly objective achievement. So you need to relate to the objective that you stated and how you achieve or not achieve that. If you did not achieve your objective, that's fine, but you have to give some explanation. Okay. So, and finally, you can see is the references for the formatting is out. Some of the details are not complete, so that's why you have to use Mendeley. But even when using Mendeley, you have to understand it's just a tool. You have to check the references, the list of references generated by Mendeley, because most of the time, if you downloaded the information or the papers from Google, for example, most of the time some of the information are missing. So for example, number 16 here, suddenly is in Chinese character. Okay, so you have to edit that. Okay, so that's why use Science Direct, for example. Use official journal publisher website in order to download any citation or any publication. Okay, otherwise you'll have trouble in terms of the details here. Okay, so I'm going to move on quickly. All right. For this one, these students, okay, you can see that the student only submitted a thesis of 52 pages long. So when I receive this, so I can see that something is not right lah. Okay, usually as I said, 50 to 60, it shows okay that for the past 1 year there's not enough work being done. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, chapter 4 over here. Okay, there's not much comment in terms. Okay, they provide the pictures, but the analysis is okay. Suddenly, okay, if you look from here, this is page 40. So until suddenly page 46. So chapter 4 only consisted of 6 pages of information. And so my comments over here, basically, sorry, chapter 4 is too short and do not give much information to the reader on the output of your research work. So 5 or 6 pages for 1 year worth of work. So doesn't make sense lah. Okay. So 4 or 6 pages for chapter 4 is just not sufficient. Okay, even though the results are there. Okay, ada 7 figures, which is okay. Tapi the elaboration, the details are not there. Okay, so conclusion. Okay, some spelling, please. Okay, be careful. Some simple macam ni. Future recommendation. So my comments basically, why did you conduct this proposed work? Okay, some of the works are quite direct or quite simple, which relates to your work objective. But sometimes you mentioned that, okay, this is my future work, but why did not you address that before? Because it's already related to your work. And you need to provide elaboration on the given recommendation. So avoid one-liner, okay? Right, so, okay, let's go to, okay, last one. Okay. Okay, this is a good student. He was my RPS, but I was not his supervisor. Okay, let's see chapter 4. Okay, this is basically a good student's work. So roughly about 140 pages long. Okay, you can see that, okay, again, these students, they use a default setting of plotting from Excel. There's nothing wrong about the plot, okay, but it doesn't capture your attention. Okay, that's an issue. Okay, for example, units tak tulis the issues tengok, and then the consistency. Some of the plots are quite big, and some of them are quite small. Okay, and figures are not detailed. You have to properly cite. Okay, figure blah blah blah. Okay, and again, these plots, they are missing the units, the labels. Okay, the same issues over and over again. Okay. And sometimes, for example, if you're doing experimental work like this, you want to highlight the crack propagation. You have to think about the audience, how you present your data. If you want to, if your material, something like this, I think, I'm not sure what material is this. Is it aluminum or something? Okay. If it's dark, you can use a piece of paper, A4 paper, as the background to highlight the shape of the propagation. Because from here, the shape is not that clear, right? Even the propagation is not that clear. So be creative. Think about how you want to present your data. Okay. Okay. So again, it's not wrong to put the captions over here, but sometimes you can rearrange the captions to put in the subfigure or subset. Okay. All right. Again, this paragraph is too long. Okay, about 1 page. This is way too long. Okay. My suggestion is to limit the sentences to 4 or 5 lines of sentences per paragraph. Okay. Comments, for example, the units are not clear. Sometimes you can edit the way that you present the data, right? So this one is too small, way too small. Okay? It doesn't. And then, for example, there are 2 legends over here: stress intensity and best fit line, but we can't even see where the best fit line is. So don't depend on the result generated by Excel and just copy and pasted it and put it in your thesis. Be creative, guys. Put some effort to highlight your work. Okay, so we can't even see the other lines over here. Okay, and for example, there's an empty line in this figure. Okay, no discussion on the behavior. The figures, again, the issues with units. Okay, some of it's too big, some of it too small. All right. Okay, so but overall, this is still a good thesis, except from the way of the way that the figures are presented. Okay, the contents are there, very well done. You can see that up until now, it's already have like 30 figures. Okay, and tables were quite a lot. Okay, and when you want to put a table, avoid splitting the table into two pages. Okay, so you want your figure or your tables to be nicely fitted in one page at least. Okay, in the same page. Okay, so avoid something like this. Okay, again, we can't see in details the two lines over here that overlap. Right. So I think, yeah. So again, figures. The my problem is just with the way that the figures are presented. Okay. Other than that, this is quite a good thesis. Okay. You can see that, okay, up until the end of the chapter, these students has 12 figures, and I think 30, was it 30? 36 plots. So you can see the efforts that the student put, but the quality of the figures sometimes is questionable. Okay, so try to avoid something like this. It's not that clear. And of course, finally, for this is discussion, very, very long. So very good, but try to use a shorter paragraph. Okay. Elaboration discussion, some of it are missing, but too many grammatical errors. So again, grammatical errors need something that you can address lah. Okay, as using the tools that I mentioned just now. Okay, conclusion, you can see that the conclusion is very, very long. So try to make it simple and easy for people to read. Okay, other than that, tak adalah, okay. Instead of formatting, issue formatting. So 142 pages, this is quite a good thesis, but again, the issues with formatting, the way that you present data, that's the issue that I had with this one. Okay, we still have, I think, a couple of minutes. I'm going to show you some of the thesis by my students. Okay, so let's go to chapter 4. Okay, so these were written by my student. This is from Azim. Okay. I'm not saying that this is a better thesis, no, but just to show you how the figures are arranged, how the thesis are written, to see that the formatting. So I always highlight, if you did a good job in experimental work or simulation work, but you did not translate that in good writing, then it's very difficult to capture the attention of the reader, especially your panels. Okay, so you need to balance. You have a good result, but you want to present your result in a better way as well. Okay, so you can see that, for example, I'm highlighting here, use bright colors. Okay, and use the full width of your page. Okay, make it as big as possible. Okay, so that to capture the attention of the audience. Okay, use bright colors. Okay, and you can see over here the plots. Okay, I'm going to highlight here. These plots, the one here, figure 1.7, it was created using Excel, but it looks a bit nicer compared to other figures that we have seen or other plots that we have seen before, because the students, he edited the figures using the tools that I mentioned. Just use black colors, and for the font, increase it a bit, the size, you can get something like this. Okay? So that's the effects of improving or using a different color scale for your plotting. Okay, so figure. This is the figures that I think look professional. Most of the publication, if you look at Science Direct, they use figures something like this. Okay, the lines are only for the header and for the bottom, this one. Okay, the rest in the middle, there are no lines at all. Okay. Okay, so figures, enlarge it as big as possible. Use bright colors to attract the attention of the audience. Okay, you can see that the colors, okay, all that, and the way that is arranged. Okay, figures, again, plotting, again, this Excel was used. to create this figure, not MATLAB, okay, not R, but you can see the difference. Okay, you can combine. Okay, maybe you bold or enhance the lines of the axis over here and still use the grid line, slightly softer color. Okay, okay, you can see the difference. Okay, figures. Okay, always highlight the figures because that's your work. You did a very good work. Okay, for those using ANSYS, okay, my advice is there is an option for you to export your figure in high quality. So if you just print screen your figure, it will not be as good as this one. So this one was exported from ANSYS using high definition output. Okay. Okay. So again, the figures. So you can see the quality is quite good compared to the one generated on default on Excel. Okay. You can see if figure is important, make it as big as possible. It doesn't matter how many pages, there's no limit on the number of pages. So enlarge your figure as big as you want to highlight the importance of the result. Okay, so conclusion, blah blah blah. Okay, I just want to highlight the numbering of the figure and of course the formatting at the end. So I can share one more. So last one. Okay, this is another thesis by my students. You can see that the number of pages, my students usually, their thesis is between 140 to 160 pages long. Okay, okay. I encourage them to share even fail result. Okay, but make it as nice as possible to present for presentation, for visualization. Okay, you can see the figures again, very bright. Okay, and very clear as well. If we zoom in, we can see clearly all the scale, the legends. Okay, you can see this all from ANSYS output from high definition ANSYS software. Okay, so again the figures, these are generated from the Excel. Okay, again Excel, but the way that it's presented is quite nice, very clear. The tables very clean. Okay, you can see how it is presented, how you arrange your figures are important. Okay, okay, I'm going to go quickly here. All right. Okay, so yep. So I think that's all that I want to share. All these, the examples that I've shown you from my students, they are available on my website. So I'm going to share with you right now how to access my website. Okay. So if you've got any questions, please do ask. Okay. So I think that's the end of my sharing session. So before I end this session, okay, this basically is the QR code for my website. So if you're interested to look at the projects that I'm working on for my students, you can have a look at the YouTube videos. There is a link in my website. So have a look. And if you're interested for postgrad opportunity, if you're interested to continue your study after your undergraduate, have a look at the video, have a look at the my website. I posted quite a lot of details over there on the work that I did. And you can always refer to the publication as well as my YouTube video for more information. So if you are interested or you've got any questions that you want to ask regarding FYP, postgraduate opportunity, drop me an email using this email here. Okay, and or you can ask questions right now if you got any. So anyone got questions? So please let me know. Tak ada. Semua dah faham kot boleh dapat A, Dr. Tan lah.
Ada soalan ke?
Tak ada.
Tadi sebelum kita tamat, saya ingat Dr. Anas telah bagi satu penerangan lah berkaitan dengan FYP 2, chapter 4 ni, the 5. dan ia satu penerangan yang detail, clear dan sangat inklusif. So kalau sesiapa student yang follow penerangan tadi, saya insyaAllah dia dapat A kot. Sebab
InsyaAllah.
chapter 4 sangat detail. Chapter 4 sangat detail dengan dia punya actually pada satu paragraf tu, satu figure tu nak kena ada introduction, nak kena ada pattern of the graph, nak ada reason, discussion, nak compare kan. So Dr. Anas dah bagi detail, saya ingat kalau semua student follow, insyaAllah boleh A. Masalahnya student nanti bila dah writing, dia hilang, tak tahu Dr. apa. Itu yang isu yang saya tengok yang berlaku lah. Satu Dr. Anas, saya tanya di Universiti Manchester University Universiti apa?
Saya Edinburgh.
Sorry.
Edinburgh, ya.
Penggunaan AI, application apps macam ChatGPT ke apa-apa ke, adakah dibenarkan untuk peringkat FYP? Macam mana?
Di peringkat FYP saya tak berani nak cakap sebab saya tak clear on that. Saya attended one of the FYP sessions a few weeks back untuk student sini lah, untuk FYP sini. Dia tak sentuh berkenaan ChatGPT ataupun AI punya ni. Cuma beberapa minggu lepas saya attend satu talk seminar by editor-in-chief of satu jurnal yang Q1 lah, yang memang besar, jurnal besar ni. Dia datang. So saya tanya dia, at the end of the session, saya tanya dia penggunaan AI assisted writing ni dalam jurnal kan. Dia kata tak ada masalah. Dia kata especially kalau kita nak improve readability dengan grammatical punya issues, tak ada isu. Memang boleh dibenarkan. Cuma untuk FYP level tu lah, saya tak berani cakap lah.
Sebab pada di UniMAP sendiri tak ada lagi clear guideline berkaitan dengan digalakkan ke ataupun sebaliknya. Cuma setakat ni kalau kita gunalah macam tu kan.
Betul.
So sebab nak increase readability, nak increase dalam grammar lah, terutama student into sebab bahasa kedua kan, English ni. So tinggal S lah, tinggal ED lah sebagainya kan.
Sangat betul, saya setuju. Just to share lah dengan Dr. Zam.
Cuma benda ni dia teknologi pembacaan panels. Ya tak?
Betul, sebab tu saya dalam dalam group tu saya tengok ada lecturer lah cakap dia tengok student cantik sangat writing ni, guna AI okey ke tak. Jadi bila guideline tu tak ada Dr. Zam, kita pun risau lah kan, macam kita as supervisor nak tengok student ni betul ke student kita buat ni idea sendiri ataupun dibantu oleh AI kan. Jadi selagi guideline tu tak ada tu, memang saya rasa jadi isu jugalah di UniMAP. Tapi kalau memang students menggunakan AI tu ialah untuk membantu improve, bila dah siap paragraph, dia masuk, dia improve dari segi rephrasing, paraphrasing, saya rasa tak ada isu.
Saya pun setuju jugalah sebab macam kita dulu, kita hantar proofreading betul tak? Kita punya artikel ke, thesis ke kan. Bila dah siap semua, kita hantar untuk proofreader lah, tolong check. Biasanya native speaker lah, tolong check kan.
Betul.
Mana kita dah berubah pada AI, bukan orang lagi.
Exactly.
Itulah.
Cuma itulah kalau macam untuk kongsi dengan Dr. Zam dan juga semua student, saya menggunakan AI ni untuk dalam membantu saya writing kan. Dan memang sangat membantu dia, as long as content tu daripada kita we have to admit lah, sebab kita ni bukan native speaker kan. Jadi writing kita tu memang Dr. Zam cakap kita kena hantar proofread, kena bayar duit lagi. Tapi dengan menggunakan AI ni memang dia improve sangat ketara lah, sangat obvious. Tapi kita kena check lah, sebab banyak kali dah bila masuk tu dia keluar tu garbage in garbage out lah. Kalau kita masuk tu elok, dia keluar elok lah. Dan kita masih perlu ada oversight. Kita kena check.
So kalau macam tu untuk FYP kita ni mungkin kita tak ada halangan lah kot nak guna Grammarly ke Billboard ke.
Betul, saya rasa memang digalakkan sebab nak improve kan.
Ya.
Cuma sebab tu saya cakap kalau nak guna Grammarly saya rasa tak ada isu Dr. Zam kan, tapi kalau nak guna AI punya tools kena sembang dengan supervisor dulu. Dia kalau tak tiba-tiba supervisor tengok cantik sangat pun dia pun risau juga saya rasa.
Ya. Dr. Anas, kalau nak tengok yang contoh-contoh tadi yang lecture notes tadi kan, mana boleh
Ya.
dapat Sudah boleh dapat macam mana?
Okey.
Nak tengok balik.
Boleh Okey, saya kongsi dengan Dr. Zam dan juga semua. Saya sekali lagi sekejap saya share Windows.
Kesalahan tu student biasa buat. Walaupun dah dengar lecture, nanti dia akan buat balik.
Betul. Itu memang biasa lah.
Dari refer mana yang sepatutnya perlu ada, apa yang tak boleh tulis do and don'ts tu, dah boleh refer balik, saya ingat cantik lah.
Okey, saya tengah share screen. Saya harap Dr. Zam dengan semua nampak. Okey, so ini ialah saya punya web page. Kalau kita go back tadi balik ke home, okey, ini ialah web page saya. Kalau nak tengok yang example of yang saya share tadi, go kepada FYP ni, Teaching and Students, FYP 101, samples ni. Masuk. Okay, dia password saya dah share tadi, dia kena masukkan UniMAP. Okay, so dalam ni ada list kat sini boleh tengok. Untuk yang atas ni ialah essential FYP tips, which is yang framework tadi lah. So dia tengah loading sekarang ni. Okay, tapi aside from that, ada juga kalau macam students kan kadang-kadang dia nak dapat some idea how to macam nak arrange ataupun format dia punya thesis dengan elok, boleh tengok dekat ni saya dah bagi dah example of proposal defense, ada PowerPoint yang boleh digunakan untuk Viva, weekly meeting nak macam mana, report for example kalau report FYP 2 yang saya share tadi tu. Okay, kat sini. Okay, ini semua from student saya lah, bukan student orang lain. Jadi bukan niat saya kata my students they are the best atau they were the best, no. Niat saya ialah nak kongsi apa yang saya rasa boleh dikongsi yang student dapat some idea lah untuk improve thesis diorang. So for example, ini yang saya tunjuk tadi tu lah. So for example kan, macam mana nak besarkan kita punya diagram, plotting semua tu. Semua ada kat website saya Dr. Zam.
Okey, baik. Terima kasih Dr. Anas. Sebelum kita tamat ni saya nak beritahu based on the rubrik kan. So untuk chapter 4, chapter 5 dia bagi student 55% daripada keseluruhan rubrik. So more than half adalah daripada chapter 4, chapter 5.
So banyak tu Azam lah.
Ya. Yang tadi pun Dr. Anas dah highlight pasal ni. Chapter 4, chapter 5 sangat penting. Kalau tak complete ataupun tak kemas, memang itu tak ada lah. Tapi kalau ikut pada contoh dan juga do and don'ts dalam talk tadi, saya ingat kalau sudah follow dengan detail, dia dapat A. Paling kurang pun A minus. Okay. Student ada persoalan tak sebelum kita tamat? Tak ada.
Hebat semua student kita. Wah.
Okay, saya harap boleh hadam balik. Tapi Dr. Anas dah pergi agak panjang kan. Boleh hadam balik setiap tips do and do dalam writing thesis. Saya tahu ini adalah first time kamu writing technical writing kan, technical thesis ni, technical paper ni. So ni first time, so belajar, ambil masa untuk belajar. Ambil masa untuk belajar dan tengoklah, ambil iktibar daripada contoh-contoh thesis yang tak elok dan buat supaya yang elok je lah. Okay? Alright, kalau tak ada apa-apa kita tamat di sini Dr. Anas.
Okay, alright. So saya nak ucapkan terima kasih kepada FYP Coordinator Dr. Saifullah, Dr. Tan dan juga of course Dr. Zamzuri atas peluang yang diberikan ni lah. So insyaAllah kalau ada rezeki lagi kita continue nanti next time.
Okay, sekian, terima kasih.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. Salam sejahtera.
Thank you, Doktor.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doktor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Ni biar nak tengok studio mana yang lain lah. Ya, tak scan ni.
Stop je ni lah.